Okay, Borko, what I asked you to do is help us evaluate NetSuite CSV Integrator, especially because we can contrast that to some of the tools that we built at Prolecto to help do a number of things for the distribution and ingestion and data and so forth. And because you are a Java developer and then NetSuite wrote this in Java, if I understand correctly, we have a opportunity to evaluate what they built, and then we could make some assessments about it and contrast that perhaps to some of the Prolecto tools so we can help our clients. You spent a little time on this, right? And maybe what we're going to do is just a little show and tell and create some orientation. Can you give some orientation to the software, how it's oriented, you know, how they packaged it, and then maybe we'll dig into the detail, but just stay at a higher level right at the moment if you can.
Okay, no problem. This solution consists of two parts. One part is this, they call it a broker. It is basically Java application, this NetSuite CSV Integrator. It's a broker and it's basically Java application written in Java. Task of that module is for connecting to local file system or remote FTP systems, bring data from those locations and deliver it to the NetSuite. On the NetSuite side is also one part of the solution is that just one RESTlet, which is written in SuiteScript 1.0, I think. And for that, we just read the payload from this broker, which will this broker deliver, and then we'll submit the job as a CSV import job. That's some overview of this solution.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, the RESTlet that they created that is installed is basically there to receive the input from the broker, and it takes in the job, and then as it gets the information, it goes in and pushes in the information using CSV. Is it the traditional CSV mapper then at that point?
Yeah, that's the traditional CSV mapper. Although they a little bit enhance system just for maybe to easy manipulation from the broker side. With that one RESTlet, one artifact also is here in this account, which is basically CSF Integration Mapping, which consists of some data which helps this broker how to figure out what to do with a particular payload. They just enhance it. This is a custom record, which basically said that's the name of the record. You specify here, this is important part, mapping ID. Basically, it's a mapping of this CSV import mappings, right? So this is ID of this mapping script. When this record RESTlet receive the payload, it will somehow know which mapping ID to trigger and try to parse the data and then to try to import that data. This is like the target mapping between payload and actual CSV import, right? Now you're able to run this broker in two modes, to say. One is, you know, as you said, headless mode as a console application, but you can run it also with a graphical user interface.
What they did just you're saying the broker now.
Broker. It's about broker, right?
And so, again, the broker is a Java application that has a couple different modes, so you can run it. You sort of have some choices where you're going to put this technology.
Yes. If you put it on a server, you can just run it as a headless mode and with some scheduler, and then to go how the scheduler configured, go to pull from a local file system or FTP and deliver that payload to NetSuite side. I just basically, because the source code is also provided, I play a little bit and see how basically it goes. I will now start this broker.
Okay.
And it now starts in console mode.
Maybe if I can pause you, maybe we can start. Let's start again, not in console mode. Maybe it's better to look at the visual interface first. It's probably easier to understand.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, now I will just switch configuration. Not in CI, but okay.
All right, so we'll begin again from here.
Yeah. Okay, now we'll try to start in a graphical mode. What first is also just put some logging info on the console. First lookup is this server lookup for which account, you know, and then based on that, do a basically lookup for other things.
Oh, and it looks like what it's doing is calling out to get those configs and so forth. So that's why it's partly the helper, right?
Yeah, that's the helper. First, it reads those configs, and just output is there just for help. But those configs are also populated here in this combo box. So you can, in this interactive mode, you can, for example, choose, do you want local FTP or SFTP? For example, let's say we want local file system. We can choose which file we want to import, select mappings. I can try to do, for example, I will try to do some samples of CSV files are provided. So I will do that.
That's perfect. And of course, it looks like they designed it only for CSV files, right? In other words, the system sort of is implied that it only wants to work with CSVs, or do you think, because the way we built it, right, we don't care what the file format is because we have a whole different kind of approach, right? Because sometimes you can't get the data in that format.
Yeah, this is somehow a solution which I think explicitly targets a CSV import machinery on the NetSuite side. Expected format is CSV. There is also one important note here, but I will discuss that later when we demo this console mode. So you can explicitly choose here which format you want. So if you do item import to the CSV, there's some items, inventory items for payload, then we will choose that mapping. Here we skip some configuration. We can go back about this.
You had to set up all that token authentication and so forth, right?
Yes,
Before
yes.
you did that, right?
That's one step you have to do, and there are some important notes there also. But let's see this logic. Now, when we hit this process button, it will basically try to deliver that file, and we see here information that this is submitted by job ID, and we have some logging about that. If we go into NetSuite account, we will see that we submitted that job and that job is processed. That's some interactive mode.
And that job ID right there, is that a job ID? Tell me about that job ID. Is there a database someplace or something?
No, I think that's the job ID is basically job ID on the, we can try to find that one.
Yeah,
Probably
maybe under
it's not something here.
It's under setup import status. I think it is setup. Try setup.
Setup.
And go to setup. Yeah, import export, and there's a status. No. There's like a job scheduler, but I don't know if you see where it says view CSV import status.
Yeah.
Yep. What we found is that never tells us the ID.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something we've discovered before is that NetSuite has these IDs, but they don't really expose it.
Maybe it's about API. If we, I think, open.
If you open up the application integration area, right, where you did your token, I think there's a REST log.
REST log, yeah, I think that we can, just a second. And I created this CSV Integrator record, and we have here, we have this restless execution log.
There you go.
So this is here.
Yep.
But also we can, there is no request response about here.
Yeah, I think it's a scheduler task job, right?
Yeah, that's the scheduler task job. So I think that is the part of this job ID. When it submits to job process CSV import, here is the procedure. I think job name, and then it tried to submit that job. Just to see here.
Yeah, this is the 1.0 code.
No, this 1.0 code. Just see here, down there, job name. Yeah, create CSV import job, and I think this import job does have import ID. Yeah, that's return value for this broker, right?
Notice it says if SuiteCloud is true, set Q. What's that?
I think that you can configure the CSV import run on these processors, right? So.
Oh, right. If you have
some type of parallelism there.
Yes. So they're trying to say, yep.
That's the one configuration parameter. That's some basic overview.
It's pretty straightforward. It's trying to leverage the mapping CSV tools to produce a CSV job, as if you were there yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing it, right?
Here, if we try to do the same one as a console application, as a headless, so I will stop now this guy. If I run this immediately, it will try to bring those mappings. It will pull from directory, where it expects to find files.
Okay.
It will find nothing, right? And it will exit. That's the main flow. Now I will try to put the same file.
So it created a directory structure for the queuing, so it moves things around.
Yeah, exactly. The sample CSV file, and I will copy this guy. Okay. And now I will run again this console mode. Now one interesting thing, I think, if everything goes well, will happen. Okay, that's one interesting. It worked. It's again imported this CSV file to import queue, so it did work correctly. But interesting question is, how does this broker know which mapping to choose, right? One important thing is when we define those mappings is that we have to somehow, as much as possible, try to keep it unique, this header information. For this, basically, broker read this header information, and then if payload does have the same header information, it will choose that header.
So it's kind of using the header string layout as a way for it to uniquely find it?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Well, but interesting, because look how they named it, item import.csv. Is it more or less any file in their pickup directory they will process, and then they somehow have to figure out, what if I named it Marty's import.csv? Would it pick up that file?
Yeah, it will. It will pick up file. It's not about naming file, but it's about naming this header information, this header format. I think they put some notes in documentation.
So then, how does that string is a way to help it identify itself?
Yeah, this CSV header format is a string to help to identify which the mapping to choose. So this something act like a key, right?
It acts like a key. What's that thing down there that says has debit and credit primary ID table number? Do you know what that is? Did they mark anything on the field help? Primary key or ID of the journal entry.
It's some I think I didn't go into that detail about importing journal entries, and then
it's the grouping key.
Yeah, grouping. I think some regarding grouping stuff.
Okay, I'm with you. And the idea is, your file comes in a particular format. You keep that consistent. We don't care what it's named. Create your header information to act like a key that will bridge it. Then you map that to a mapping ID. Then in that mapping ID over there, that's where you did your definition, where you, make check number go here, date, and you use the traditional mapper there to make it go further.
That's how it works on this NetSuite side. On this broker side, you also have to do some configuration, right? So this is the NetSuite properties. So I will move this guy. You essentially define those as a property file. Endpoint of this web services URL. Define, do you want to do OAuth or username password authentication? We decide to go with this. Then maximum row for processing, date formats, the standards information regarding connecting to. This is by default URL for when you install the bundle. So no changes there. We decided to go with OAuth, so didn't specify email and password. Those are some testing. Those are directories, on local file system, which pulling from the local file system, it will go from there. And if you choose FTP, it will basically go from FTP side and bring some files there and do the same logic. That's it. And for FTP, standard configuration, and for SFTP, if we are connecting with private keys, so we can do that.
Okay, interesting thing right there. Okay, so they've got, in the FTP world, they're also saying removed process file, error directory, and process directory. Okay, so they, just like we've done before in our remote systems, where we need to manipulate the files after we process them, they've got something there. What are they doing in the inbox, and then after they process, are they changing the name of the file and so they can grow it?
No, they move it to processed, basically just from the inbox, they move it to the processed,
But what if you have the same file name and the second time it comes in, what would it do?
Maybe it will collaborate, I'm not quite sure, but let's see, because I did it same time. Just a second here. If we go here and go to the integration file, inbox is empty and processed.
Oh no, it renamed it.
It renamed, yeah. They put some timestamps.
With the timestamping on it as a way of doing it. Okay, that works pretty good. Okay, so it looks like a pretty good tool.
Yeah, it's an interesting tool. Yeah, it does one job very well. So it really import that file and CSV will process that. And
Okay, so my instinct says, let me ask a question for you. Given the things we did with our camel services, right?
yeah,
Could you see this living side by side or nearby? Like, what would you do with this, given what you learned here? How would you think about this relative to things we've done with Camel and Ream? What comes up for you as you think about this?
this is somehow, it's just like name says, it's a CSV integrator. So you have to produce CSV file, and it will ingest those files on the NetSuite side by the default tools. So that's somehow linear. Regarding format, regarding process is also somehow linear because you are choosing just a remote file system as FTP or SFTP. So
let me ask you a question before you answer all that. You know how in Ream we've created a record that says we ingested the job and we have some control over it. Do you notice that did they create any kind of record that says that they submitted the job into the CSV, or they don't have anything like that? No database of.
I didn't see that. That only customer record is this mapping definition.
The mapping. Okay, go ahead. All right, let's continue on with your thoughts. I'm sorry.
That's the only. Well, this is they are processing CSV, so you don't have any other option than CSV file and CSV import. Now, usually, for example, for one client, we have very complex structures of data with lots of hierarchies, right, and complex structures to create in the NetSuite. I think that case will not fit this solution. Right. So we have to create a purchase order, and then item receipt and matching item receipt with purchase order and inventory numbers and lots of records, sub-records on the lines and lots of things, complex things. So it doesn't fit that, I think, approach. That's one limitation, how complex record you want to create on the NetSuite side. On the other side, one thing is lacking on the other side, the broker side, that it's just read once what it finds and then exit, right? So you have to employ some third-party solution for scheduling to pack that as a batch file or some script and then try to execute it like that, and you schedule with some external tools, right? And operating level or something like that. That's
because it's basically just a executable in some respects, right? So it's got to get fired somehow or another, right?
Yeah, so, this is just for demoing, it's not, because it's fire once and exit. If it doesn't find anything, it will exit immediately. It's not a real service, right? It's just you have to pull it each time.
It's not a real service in the sense that you're not using Java scheduling and various other things that you could use, whereas you'd have to use something external.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We have opportunity on our system to do a really complex thing, to do some routing, to split payloads, to deliver part of the payloads to some Amazon S3 bucket, and to proceed with some part of the payload in the NetSuite or something like that. It's also, our solution does have some this heavy exception handling, if we retry logic and everything what somehow is needed to do some heavy.
So we can handle all kinds of different formats. We have all kinds of retry logic and so forth. We have all kinds of splitting kind of capacities. We've got all kinds of things that we can dial it in so that it's trouble free, right, for a specific situation.
Specific, exactly.
Yes. Okay, let me ask you this. When you looked at the Java code, did you browse it a little bit? Would you say that it's, is it using any kind of special frameworks or anything that would concern you? No. Or it's like, no, you could work with this,
No, I have few problems when I start to investigate a little bit because it was, configured to work with Java 7. And when I started with Java 7, then I got some mysterious error. I have to dig a little bit deeper to find what's going on. And at the end was Java 7 doesn't support TLS 1.2, and NetSuite switched to TLS 1.2 that doesn't support anymore, or 1.1, I think 1.0, I'm not so sure. But when I switched to Java 8, then everything works fine. That's one part.
So in other words, how did you know it was developed in Java 7, but it's like it doesn't even work in Java 7?
Well, when I import project as an Eclipse project, it was configured to work with Java 7. So I was a little bit confused, it is configured to work with Java 7, and Java 7 doesn't support these latest sockets. And error, I didn't get any meaningful error, just application exits and without any.
Right, because it couldn't connect.
Because it cannot find configs. That was my error. When I saw that, everything went pretty nice.
How was the documentation? Was it pretty good?
Well, documentation on these configurations is pretty good. It's a standard documentation for all, I think, SuiteSolutions, very good, structured, fine, and with some use cases. So it's also, they provided everything. They provided also these samples. Already you have some mappings in the account when you install bundles, so everything is really set for running. So
that's good news. So it's a pretty good thing, right? In other words, you had a little bit of tripping up, but after a while, you were able to get it going pretty good.
Yeah, it's just not.
How much time do you think you spent to get it going?
Well, maybe one afternoon. It's not too much time. It was funny because I didn't find any meaningful error after that. So. And it was one cent, and then I quickly debug that and find the right error and see, just switch to Java 1.8, everything works fine on that side. Regarding configuration, I configured this token for this Prolecto super user account, right? Super user role. And then also at the first time, didn't get those mappings. So because you probably installed that bundle into account, and then you were owner and you were administrator, I didn't have access to these records here. Sorry, not the records here, but those mappings, CSV mappings. Everything was fine. It reads that, but didn't find mapping when I tried to import file. I had to go there and make that CSV mapping public, and then everything works well. So some, configuration issues, but not a big deal.
Right. The software sort of set up in the environment has to be sort of dialed in, and you got to get the understanding. Were you guided by the documents, or it was more like your background and knowledge in NetSuite helped you do it?
I just go to the code and then see how it goes in the NetSuite. I didn't spend too much time on documentation. Documentation really well, but I did it as in documentation, but I think there's no documentation how to set up the token-based authentication and for which user and which user installed the bundle. So there are some issues there, as always. So it's not.
Got it. Okay. All right. Great. This looks like it's pretty good. I think this was a good study, and I should be able to. Do you have anything else you probably want to say about it?
One more thing is this is one direction, right? We pull from CSV local file system or SFTP, FTP side to the NetSuite, but almost all our cases was bidirectional.
Right.
We have to deliver something to NetSuite, and then as a response, we have also to deliver something from NetSuite to third party. And that's this tool, I think, doesn't support that. It's just a CSV import from the remote system, and it does it very well. So
it really is kind of like a helper system for CSV imports. That's really what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's a good little helper system for that, right? But you need something bidirectional and so forth. It's really not very scalable, right? It's just it's a helper system.
Yeah, it's a helper system. Yeah.
When this thing, it doesn't have enough capacity, right? We can really take them to the next level. Okay, this is good.